I have to tell you, on Tuesday of this week, I had my sermon half written. And as of 9 o'clock this morning, I had my sermon about half written. And so, normally I have this 3-point thing. I have no idea where this is going to end up. I know where it's going to start because I'm going to start with the stuff that I have written, and then it's just going to go from there. And by the way, Pete, if I get lost, whatever's on that paper is not going to help me, so just leave it there, all right? The lesson, thank you again, Pam. The lesson is that we have for today is the ascension from Acts chapter 1. And basically the setting is this. Jesus has been resurrected for 40 days. He's made appearances to his disciples. And remember what happened to him before the resurrection. He has been brutally assaulted and then even more brutally crucified. He died a horrible death at the hands of some very horrible oppressors. And that's going to figure into the rest of this story. But for right now, he's resurrected. He's been here for 40 days. And now it's time for the 40 days of appearances to end. And so he takes the disciples up on a mountain. And the disciples, they're asking the burning question. When are you going to restore the kingdom to Israel? They have a good reason to ask this question. Not because of the resurrection, but because of what happened before that. You see, and even before that, for hundreds of years, the country of Israel has been under somebody's thumb. The Assyrians, the Babylonians, those guys, the Persians, there we go, the Greeks, and now, worst of all, the Romans. And the Romans kept people in heavy taxation, so it kept most of the population poor. And if you got out of line, you're going to end up where Jesus ended up. It was oppressive and it was brutal. In fact, just to make a point, a few years before this, there was a group of people that rebelled against the Roman government, and they took 1,000 people and hung them on crosses, looked like telephone posts up and down the roadsides. The message is obvious. You get out of line, this is going to happen to you. That's what they wanted. That's why crucifixion was the method of choice for execution. And so they're living under this oppression, and they just want to know. They have no answers to any of their questions, and they just want to know, Jesus, when is this going to end? When are you going to restore the kingdom to Israel? Did you hear how Jesus answered? He said, no, it's not for you to know the times and seasons. Basically what he's saying is the answer to that question is above your pay grade. You don't get to know. Instead, be my witnesses, and be my witnesses in Jerusalem, which is where you are right now, but then it's going to spread out from there. It's going to go to Judea, basically the country of Israel. Then it's going to go to Samaria. And Samaria are the sworn enemies of the Israelite people, God's people. And then it's going to go to all the ends of the earth, which includes, guess who? These brutal Romans. It's going to go every place. That's what Jesus says. And of course the disciples are wondering, be my witnesses? We got a mess here, Jesus. And you're going to leave us? They're looking up in the clouds as he goes away. Wait a minute, come on back. Come on back. We need you. We need you here. We need you now, in the middle of this mess. We need you. It takes us 2 angels to simply say, stop looking up in the clouds. You got your marching orders. Go do it. Be my witnesses. And that's supposed to change the world. Of course, in hindsight, we find out later on that it does change the world, right? But in that moment, could the disciples possibly know that simply going one-on-one, witnessing to somebody else is going to change the world? I doubt it. I doubt it. But you think about it, that's how our world got changed too. Did you come to Jesus or get to know Jesus by some worldwide event? Or by some program that changed the world? No, you didn't learn it that way. You learned it from your mom and your dad. or your Sunday school teachers or your pastor. You learned it from your teachers at school. And most of them were Christian, but and even if they couldn't talk about it, what they did was they would, in the way that they treated you, in the way that they loved you, they would show you. And it just carried from one place to the next to the next. And it's powerful. It spreads like wildfire that way. But the disciples couldn't see that at the time. All they could see was a big old mess. Sort of like when I was a kid, we had a great big box of Lincoln Logs. And for those of you who maybe don't know, Lincoln Logs were the 1960s answer to Legos, okay? And a big box. I mean, Mom and Dad, they just filled that sucker up. And what Doug and I would do, my brother and I, is we would dump the box out. And we'd start playing with them. And then we'd get tired of playing with them. And the mess is all over the floor. And then we'd be told that, well, it's time to pick up the mess. But you know, for a couple of little kids, the mess was just too big. And that's what the disciples are seeing. All they see is this pile of Lincoln Logs. And the mess is way too big. And so they ask Jesus, when are you going to restore the kingdom? When are you going to pick up the mess? And now he leaves. And he leaves us with this. And just a simple command. Go, be my witnesses. Tell others. Leave the rest to me. Okay, well, that's what I know I'm going to say to you. Let's sing a little bit, and then I'll figure out what I'm going to say next. So I had a good start on Tuesday. And then things changed at about 11:30 Tuesday morning when an 18-year-old kid walks into an elementary school and starts shooting the place up. That's why I got stuck, folks. That's why I continue to get stuck. Okay, good. And where was I going to go with that? I don't know. But, yeah, the answers are just too big. I mean, something like this happens, and by the way, it's not just that. Because just a few days before, a bunch of people got killed in a grocery store. And just a few days before that, there was a shooting in a church in California. But that's not the end of it. I saw shortly after this thing at Robb Elementary, I saw a Facebook post, and maybe some of you saw it as well. The list of school shootings, just education institutions, school shootings since 1999, where students or teachers were killed. And it was a Facebook post, and I kept scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. Did any of you see this? Yeah, scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. There were hundreds of them, literally hundreds of them. I read someplace since 2009, I think that was Sandy Hook, 256. Back to 99, it's got to be 500, 400 or 500. And it's just beyond belief. And all you can do is, there's no answers to this. I have nothing to say to that. All I have are questions. Why? Questions. How? How does evil worm its way into an 18-year-old who's just kind of angry, and take that anger and turn it into such a rage and such a passion that he could, without thinking about the goodwill of others or the well-being of others, walk into a classroom, look a teacher in the eye and say good night and kill her on the spot. And then turn to the rest of the class, 4th graders, 5th graders, and say, today you're all going to die. What kind of evil is that? It's bigger than I can comprehend. But most of all, the question that I'm asking, when, O Lord, are you going to restore the kingdom to Israel? I mean, it's a mess. It's like the Lincoln logs on the floor, scattered all over the place. And it's way too big for any of us to answer. And yes, I've been listening to the news just like all of you this week. And there are lots of answers out there, aren't they? And by the way, this is not a donkey issue, and this is not an elephant issue. And if you're attaching yourself onto that and pressing God into your elephant or into your donkey, think again. God has to come first, and then the response flows out of that. But when are you going to restore the kingdom? Because this is way bigger than any of the answers that are out there. I mean, all those answers, some of them are good answers, I think, but in the end, they don't address the real question. This overwhelming evil that just is so much a part of the fabric of our world that if you're honest at all about it, and we always try to be honest here, if you're honest at all about it, it just leaves you speechless. What does Jesus say to that? You will not know the times or the seasons which the Father has appointed. But this is your job. Be my witnesses to your own kind, and then to your own area, and then to your sworn enemies, and then to the oppressive evil that casts a dark shadow over your world. Be my witnesses. And then he leaves. And it's like we're here all by ourselves. But he gives us that. And we can't, like the disciples, we can't see our way through. We can't see how this is going to end up with that. All we have is this belief, this faith, that what Jesus asks us to do will change the world. So be my witnesses, Jesus says. And basically, I think the reason witnessing is so effective is because it doesn't stand above and say, this is what you should do, this is what you should do, this will make the world a perfect place. No, it doesn't do that at all. Instead, what it does is it takes somebody like me, somebody like you, and your life's a mess. I know that because my life's a mess, and I'm standing here in front of you. And you're asking God to take the mess of your life and turn it into a message for others who have messy lives. Mess like being separated from the people that you love. A mess like anger and resentment, which you give to God and it turns into some kind of healing. And then you share that mess with others. And that mess becomes a message because it's not just your mess, it's mess redeemed by God through the blood of Jesus. It's a message of self-giving in a time of selfishness. It's a mess of love in the time of the evil of hatred. It's a mess of forgiveness in a world where we are encouraged to hold on to everything that everyone does against us. That's the mess, redeemed by God, that turns into a message. Not you standing over the top, but you standing eye to eye in the care and love of Jesus. I think that's why church is more important now than it's ever been before. Maybe it's always been that much important because our world looks terrible, but look back a few years. I mean, Nazi Germany. Talk about a mess. Right? And I could go back and back and back, on and on. Church is never more important than it is right at this moment. Because we don't have answers to the big questions. All we have are questions. And a command from Jesus to don't worry about the big picture. This is small ball. Play with me, one-on-one, person to person, heart to heart. Tell them about me. Amen.